Well, it is so nice to be here with you, AFN community. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules. Happy May Day. And being present with us today is really important, and we are grateful for you. Our Hunger and Housing 101 series is intended to engage us deeper than our committee meetings or in addition to our committee setting. And so from April through September, we have designed these evening topics that are related to hunger and housing most of the time in Arizona, but when such an important bill like this is coming about, we like to focus on the national landscape as well. And it's during these sessions that we'll dive into education and advocacy efforts with a lot of our local experts in order to build capacity within our own faith communities. We know that we are currently grappling with unprecedented affordable housing and eviction crisis that results in a staggering increase in individuals enduring life-threatening economic hardships and experiencing homelessness. We also know that hunger is so big in our communities. And so we, in collaboration with our dedicated partners at WHEAT, Arizona Food Bank Network, Lutheran Advocacy Ministries of Arizona, and Pinnacle Prevention, we play a pivotal role as a co-founder of the Anti-Hunger Alliance of Arizona. And we are a community of partners using policy and advocacy to eradicate hunger across Arizona. And the Alliance is dedicated to combine policies that perpetrate hunger and harm the most vulnerable people in our community. We strive to address the root causes of hunger and prevent its continued prevalence in our communities. And beloveds, we invite you to join us to advocate, to march, to speak truth to power, call for justice, testify, write letters, sign on, and show up for yourself, your faith, and your neighbor, and for all of us here in Arizona. You are invited to build bridges with us in all of the ways that our various faith and non-faith expressions call us to do. And we want to thank you for being a part of this network. We hope that you consider donating $10 to $20 to keep our impactful work going, because it's partnership like yours that help our communities thrive. You can also check out our faith forum where you can opt in and out of the information that we share with our faith network. From housing updates to calls for advocacy, you can visit our website for more information. But tonight's presentation, I am so honored to have Matt with us from Bread for the World. He is going to be presenting on the Farm Bill. So just a heads up, every 5 years, the Congress reauthorizes something, as we know, as the Farm Bill. And its goal was to address the nation's food, agriculture, nutrition, forestry, energy, and conservation needs. And the Farm Bill is vital to our Arizona communities because it can continue to show strong support for our farmers, our ranchers, our forest stewards through a variety of safety net, farm loans, conservation, disaster assistance programs. And while the Farm Bill was not passed last year, that means it has the opportunity to be heard this summer. And that is what it is slated to be done, although we'll see. The good news is that we still have time to help inform what it is and how it can best protect that food, agriculture, and more here in this great state of Arizona. And so we are bringing in the expert, Matt Gross, who is the Director of Organizing and Faith Engagement for Bread for the World. He is the lead staff who is responsible for the implementation of the mobilizing and organizing strategy all across Bread's national network. Previously, he built and led broad-based community organizations in Chicago and Dane County, Wisconsin. And he's worked extensively with religious congregations, unions, and nonprofit organizations to build their leadership capacity, to shape successful campaigns on affordable housing, hate crimes, and healthcare. He has over 20 years of experience in neighborhood development, public policy, teaching, and community organizing. He has trained, mentored, and worked for the Industrial Areas Foundation, which is the nation's oldest and largest network of broad-based community organizations. Matt Thank you so much. You're 2 hours ahead of us. I don't know about you, but about 8:30, I've brushed my teeth. I've taken my last sip of wine. I'm laying down. So thank you for being with us tonight. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you. But before I do that, actually, I think I'm going to show a video. I'm going to show a video first, and then we'll turn it over to Matt. But I want you to start thinking about, I'm trying to plant some seeds to cultivate some action to come from tonight's program, is I invite you to start thinking about how can you get your faith community or your family or your friends or your neighborhood or the folks down at the library to do something, to send letters to help inform. You can develop creative cards that leave blank spaces for people to fill in, like Mad Libs. Remember back in the day? Have some fun with it. Don't do just the regular letter that is going to be like, yeah, there's 10,000 of these. It still doesn't matter to me. Draw their attention. And if I know anybody in the community that has creative experience and organizing experience, it's my faith folks, right? We are the most creative and most energized and most organized group of people out there. Keep that in mind. Don't forget that about yourselves. So I invite you to think creatively on how to engage. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to watch a video that was put out for Bread to the World. And when it ends, I'm going to go ahead and Matt can jump on. So let me share my screen with you all. Let me double check it lets me like the audio. There we go. Because we always have to change things. All right, here we go.
Well, Elijah's farm is named after my son. He is 11. I started the farm with him in mind because I wanted a way to help teach him how to survive, but also build generational wealth. And for me, generational wealth isn't just about money, it's about knowledge, it's about self-sustainability, education, and opportunity. Okay, Eve, where do you think we should put carrots? Put those together. There are so many things that I love about farming. So I got into farming because I started actually looking into social justice issues around agriculture and realizing that certain groups of people were missing opportunities to get into farming. And so I said, what does it look like for me to use the gifts that I have to create space, not only for my people, my family, my son, but also for people who could be just like me out here in the world who did not even know that they could do this. And what does it look like for us to try something new? And so that's what got me initially into farming. They look, it's funny. The cabbage flies are so pretty that I often forget that they're here because they're eating my cabbage. For me, it's a passion because if we could feed people better and make it sustainable, that things that we impact socially and systematically could improve so much greatly simply from feeding people healthy food. When you give people in communities that are underserved access to healthier food and you teach them how to utilize it, you provide an opportunity for people's children's brains to have better development. When you give people better brain development, you have better school outcomes, you have better citizens in your community because everybody is more well. It reduces the amount of money that we have to spend on Medicaid. It reduces the amount of money that we have to spend on educational supports. And it provides more people into our community who can get back into our system to make sure that everyone gets their needs met. Healthier people make a healthier society. Older farmers and farmers who have been in production are facing unprecedented changes in climate, and that is changing the ability for people to grow and get their return on the work that they're putting in. We need resources for new farmers to come in to replace farmers who are retiring. We need resources to make sure that underserved farmers and underserved communities are able to meet equity needs in order to have a place at the table going forward. All of these things are things that are currently being discussed in the 2023 Farm Bill. We need access to those things in order to make growing food a sustainable thing for people to have interest in and a commitment to. I think the global impact of the advocacy work of Bread for the World allows us to look at farming not just from the United States perspective. And advocating for the Farm Bill essentially is advocating for food for the world. Because what we grow here and the systems of food sovereignty that we need can set a stage for support for other components of food needs across the world. And I think that having Bread for the World participate in the needs of Black farmers in particular allows a voice at the table. Thank you, and thank you again for a multitude of things. Many of you who do advocacy work could be doing something else. And I thank you for choosing this as a passion job that probably does not give you nearly as many of the creature comforts that you would prefer. And I don't even know you, but I thank you because I know that what you're doing for me and for the generation to come is valuable and important. Continue to listen to what the needs are of farmers, young and old. Continue to tell the story. You're doing the right thing, even when you're not sure. And when you're done advocating, come on out here and grow some vegetables.
So before I bring Matt and welcome Matt back into the space, I just want to invite you all to just settle in, however it is that you find yourself. Thank you for allowing us into your homes or wherever it is that you're zooming in from. What a gift to be here alongside each of you. House church in a different way, right? From a Christian perspective. I just invite you to pay attention to what's around you. Take a look up. Imagining what is above the ceiling or the roof. Feeling the elongation in your neck. Recognizing how your breathing might change. And look down to the ground, whatever is beneath us. Paying attention to how your breath changes, what you notice. And then make yourself big. Feel yourself into the space that you're in. And whatever your faith tradition calls you to do at this moment, I'll just give just a few moments for you to embark in that ritual of settling in, of finding meaning, and being present in each other's homes. Ten seconds of breath. That felt good. Welcome, Matt. I welcome you into the space. If you all would like to share where you're zooming in from, if you want to share a ritual that helps you be more present, please share that into chat with us. And Matt, it is all yours. I'll stop talking.
No, great. Thanks, Reverend Ellie. It's good to be with you all. Thanks for that introduction and that welcome. And good to see all of your faces. And hi, Reverend Katie. Good to see you as well. So yeah, I'm with Bread for the World. I'm the Director of Organizing and Faith Engagement with Bread. And we're honored and proud to be partners with Arizona Faith Network and probably with some of your congregations as well. Reverend Katie sits on our national board, and we're proud to have her there and proud to be in partnership. You know, Bread for the World is a national hunger advocacy organization rooted in the Christian tradition, but we work to end hunger and poverty, and it's just great to work with organizations that obviously care about ending hunger, but also get that intersection of all the other root causes. You know, hunger is hunger is an effect of so many other root causes connected to poverty and racism and war and all of those big problems. So we're honored to be able to work in partnership with all of you to address it and end it. So I wanted to talk a little bit, and with the group here, I'm more than happy to have a conversation too. So don't hesitate to bring questions coming. It is a really interesting time. Today is a really interesting day because as Reverend Ellie sort of hinted at, we've been sort of asking that question for the last 2 years, are we going to get a farm bill? And we've already seen that deadline come and go. We're working on an extension, but today that both the House and the Senate dropped farm bills. And so it's not totally unprecedented. You go from sort of, it seems like all hope is lost, and then suddenly things are happening. So things can happen in Congress when they really want them to. So now the devil is in the details, right, as they say. So we can talk a little bit more about that, but it really is an opportune time, and Congress is paying attention and really thinking about the Farm Bill right now, and there is still opportunity for us to weigh in. So we'll come back to and end with I know you're going to be talking about call to action and whatnot, but just know your voice is going to be important. So I'll just say a few more words about the Farm Bill, and then talk a little bit about sort of the politics of where we're at right now, and see what kind of questions folks have or reactions folks have. But Amber really put it well in that video. The Farm Bill is a huge omnibus piece of legislation, which is a strange way of just saying it's a whole collection of a whole bunch of thousands of pieces of legislation all wrapped into one, right? And it's sort of impossible to understand all of it. But our efforts around the Farm Bill in the last 2 years have really been an effort to try and think about it as a systems bill, and because food system is something that we've talked a lot about over the last couple of years. It was something that we all became sort of living room discussion during the pandemic. It seems prior to the pandemic, I don't think. Well, you all probably did, because I imagine you all, like Bread for the World members, are well read and keep up, but food systems just weren't something that were in our normal day lexicon. And then suddenly the pandemic gave us a bit of an education about how interrelated our food system is, our local system is, our state systems, our regional and international. And the Farm Bill is a piece of legislation that impacts them on all of those on every level. So Bread for the World, we really sought to build a vision for a Farm Bill that really treated the Farm Bill as a systems, with a systems view, really thinking about how all those pieces work together and fit together. Because normally what happens is the Farm Bill gets carved up into all of its different titles, and you have experts and all sorts of them sort of all fighting for their own piece of the pie, if you will. And we really wanted to put a vision out there that sort of wove them all together. And long story short, we spent about a year doing listening sessions across the country with people just like you, with people in our congregations, with folks who are most impacted, with folks who are working in the anti-hunger field, with policy experts, with politicians, with all sorts of folks, really to build a vision of what should the Farm Bill look like. And we came through on 3 core values. One is that the Farm Bill needs to increase nutrition. One, it needs to meaning we need more healthy food available to all people. equity was the second value, meaning we need to be able to expand access to all sorts of folks, particularly those who have been disadvantaged for whatever reason. And then third, it needed to be sustainable. And that's another way of thinking about and talking about climate issues. So those are three big values. And we sought to then build a list of policy priorities that reflected those values. And I think that I've shared actually that whole list with you in the past, or at least another meeting, and we can share that whole list with you. We have a policy platform of about 25 or 30 priorities that we've actively advocated for over the course of the last year and a half. But it really sort of boiled down to four areas that have really been the things that we've really tried to zero in on and focus and try to get done. And one is to protect SNAP, and that's always sort of at the top of the food chain, if you will, and SNAP being what was formerly known as food stamps, right? It's our country's largest and most effective nutrition program, and it's authorized through the Farm Bill. It's authorized in the nutrition title of the Farm Bill, and it's the biggest piece of the Farm Bill pie in terms of money. So always protecting SNAP, but then also strengthening SNAP. No program is perfect, and we know that. And so how do we continue to strengthen SNAP? And one of the ways that we've really tried to do that in this Farm Bill is to advocate hard for a program called the GusNet program, the Gus Schumacher Nutrition Incentive Program. And it's sort of a SNAP add-on program. You all might have experienced it if you go to the farmer's market, and you'll often see double up. In my state, it's called double up bucks. But folks who receive SNAP dollars can receive double the amount of dollars to spend on fruits and vegetables at a farmer's market. So it's a supplement to help encourage the purchase of more fresh fruits and vegetables. And it's been started as a pilot project in about 3 states not too long ago, and it's slowly been scaled up, and it's been incredibly effective. So we've really been pushing hard this year to increase funding for that, and also to decrease the matching grant for that. One of the ways that communities get access to that program is through a grant program. But to access that, you have to be able to match the grant. And for some communities and some nonprofits, that's very doable. You can imagine the equity issues that then come into play. And it means often that a lot of rural and more underserved communities can't access the program because they can't meet the same matching level. So we've advocated for that matching percentage to come down. So that's nutrition side. Around the equity value, we've really focused on two areas there. One on expanding SNAP to Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico, the folks who live on that island are U.S. citizens, but they're treated in a second-class manner. They have access to what's called NAP, the Nutrition Assistance Program. They do not have access to SNAP. And what NAP is essentially a big block grant. And by that, it means they get a chunk of money. And when they use up all that money, then it's gone. And that puts them in an incredibly vulnerable position in a community that is highly susceptible to climate impacts. So unlike the SNAP program, which expands when the need is there, if they're out of money through their NAP program and a hurricane hits, as it happened 5 years ago, they're out of luck. They have to wait years to have additional money reauthorized, and that's what happened 5 years ago. So they're treated in a second-class manner. So we've been coming alongside Puerto Ricans who have been advocating for a NAP to SNAP transition for years to help encourage that. We've also been working hard to try and eliminate the felony SNAP ban in the country, which has become a state issue. A lot of states have proactively moved to eliminate that SNAP ban for folks who have a felony and who have served the time that they were sentenced, are coming out of prison. In the past, they still are unable to receive access to SNAP. sounds pretty cruel and unusual to me, and to most folks as well. So, but states have been moving to eliminate that ban, but we still have a couple states that don't, and it's still sort of a hodgepodge across the country. So having the federal government be able to level that playing field and eliminate it across the board would be incredibly helpful. So those are two of the highlights on the equity side. And on the sustainability side, we've really been focused on food waste, trying to eliminate food waste. Really interesting issue, I think, and one, it's sort of an obvious hunger issue because we're throwing away a lot of food that's good food and edible food, and that could be easily donated to food banks or food pantries and can be given to families that need it. But it's also a climate issue because a lot of that food, good food, ends up in landfills. And it is the second largest driver of methane gas in this country. And that's something that's preventable as well. So it's an interesting, really interesting cut of an issue that certainly, as I said, has a hunger focus, but it really has a climate one as well. And so we've been trying to address that in a number of ways, but the one that Bread's really been front and center on. Sorry, my computer is just shifting down on me here. The one that we've really tried to focus on around the Farm Bill has been trying to address food date labeling. So if you go to a supermarket in Arizona or a supermarket in Illinois, where I live, all of the date labels are different. We have a hodgepodge collection from state to state. There's no national mandate. It's all based on state and industries, what they want to do. So we've been pushing for a bill that would create a system of uniform system of two labels, best by and used by, I believe, to standardize those labels and make it clear. And it's something that the industry has been very supportive of. They don't want to throw out food, but they do if they're confused, and date labeling confusion is one of the number one drivers of food being thrown away. Because if industries just aren't sure, they end up throwing it away, even though we have helped to pass legislation that limits liability. They still take that action. And we've also heard that pretty consistently from food banks as well. If they're not sure, they'll throw it away. But there also is a dignity component in there as well, because most food banks don't feel great about putting food up on their shelves that, you know, they know to still be good, but has a label on it that indicates it's not. Because let's be honest, if I'm going to the grocery store, I'm not buying food that has a label that indicates it's not as good, right? I'm going to buy something that has a label that is telling me it's still fresh and still good. So there's a dignity component tied in there as well. But food date labeling has been the other issue around sustainability that we've really tried to focus on. So that's a quick overlay of our priorities and agenda. And I'll pause there for a minute to see if there's any questions before I jump into more of the political update.
Thank you. You can unmute yourself or raise your hand, whichever you would prefer. Gail Turner looks like she has a question. Yeah.
I did not realize that there's no standardization for the food date labeling. I thought
Right.
that was, from the FDA or.
Yeah, no, it is not. It is a state by state system, and the FDA is not involved. So yeah, this would create that standardization.
So how can we, to whom shall we advocate? Shall we talk to in our legislators or?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. And in short, whoever your member of Congress is, that's the best person to talk to, and both your member in the House and your two senators. But if you happen to know any Republicans who are on the House Ag Committee, those would be good people as well. So I don't know, Gail, if you have any insight. No, I'm sort of joking, but not really. But we'll talk a little bit more about that. It's a great question. You definitely want to communicate with your member.
So
Wow.
and I have a question, if I may, and thank you, Gail, that those were great, very practical questions. And I know we'll get into a little bit more about who do we write and what do we write kind of stuff in a little bit.
Okay.
But you had said something in the presentation about how Bread for the World for the last few years, really, and the last year, been conducting these listening sessions. Can you tell us a little bit more about what is the importance of a listening session? Maybe how did you find people to just tell us about the process. And I asked this question as a way to invite us to think differently about how we organize ourselves to gather the voices of our communities for a bill like this.
Sure. Yeah, no, definitely. So, a listening session is really just a group. It can be a group like this, but it can take so many forms, in person or on Zoom. And it's an organizing tool. It is a space to come together to build relationships or deepen relationships with one another, and to do some listening with one another. And so we did this around the Farm Bill. We're actually starting to do this around the new campaign that we're moving forward, and I'll make a plug for that too here in a few minutes. But called Nourish Our Future, which we're just now starting to do listening campaigns all over the country. But in those meetings, we usually start out with giving a short presentation, usually through PowerPoint, which just introduce the folks in the room to the campaign we're working on and some of the broad priorities we're starting to think about. And then it asks you to reflect on those and think about and share what you think in terms of your experience. If you can relate to it, if you have a story that relates to it, and not all of us have maybe what we would consider dramatic or compelling stories that might relate to these issues, but definitely all of us have a story, and definitely all of us have an experience that we can usually relate to these issues in some way. And maybe it's more an experience than of as a story, whether it's maybe something we're doing through our church or through a volunteer or through our kids or whatnot. But it's just a space to start lifting up those ideas and those thoughts. And when we do it collectively across the country, and we take notes and we listen for the themes and the ideas. And once we put all those things together, we start to see some of those themes and priorities come to the surface. And that's how we built this Farm Bill platform, by presenting a broad platform and asking. We did listening sessions with over 2,000 people, and out of those we started to hear different ideas. So for one example, one of the themes that we heard after we did a whole bunch of listening sessions 2 years ago was our members came back and essentially said, the platform looks good, but you're not thinking enough about climate. That's what we heard collectively as we started to compare notes and whatnot, is that more folks were asking for more focus on climate. And that's when we went back to the table and started doing some more research to think about how do we get at climate within the Farm Bill and with a hunger lens. Because Bread for the World's a hunger organization. There's lots of climate issues out there that in theory we're supportive of, but we're a hunger organization, and how do we connect our lane to having impact there? And that's what led us to food waste. That's what led us to date labeling. That was, so nobody in our house meetings said to us, hey, you need to check out date labeling and think about that. but we did hear very clearly that we're concerned about the environment, and we know the environment is driving food insecurity, and we want to see that reflected more in this platform. So
That's awesome, Matt. Thank you. I feel like Bread for the World is doing the work for the policymakers.
to some degree, we just, now we just got to get them to listen to us, right? Yeah.
There you go. There
Yeah.
you go. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for that. Anybody else have any questions for Matt before he moves on to the next stage of his presentation? Reverend Katie, were you going to unmute? No.
Organizers always do the work for policymakers. That's great. Yep.
All right, go ahead, Matt. I'm turning it back over
Great.
to you.
Okay, very good. And I did put a link to our full platform in the chat there, so feel free to, if you want to see all of the priorities, and the ones I noted are certainly in there. So just a quick political update. So as I tipped my hand when I started, just today, both on the House side and the Senate side, in the Ag committees, both committees dropped initial bills on the Farm Bill. And I'm sure you all know, but Congress 101, there's a whole bunch of committees made up of members of Congress, and each of those committees have different jurisdictions which determine what they focus on. And the authorizing committees for the Farm Bill are the Ag committees in both the House and the Senate side. The House Ag Committee is chaired by, the House is controlled by Republicans, so Republicans get to chair that committee, although there's always a ranking member from the other side. But Representative G.T. Thompson in Pennsylvania is the House Ag Chair. And on the Senate side, it's flipped, right? Democrats control that. And Senator Debbie Stabenow of Michigan is the chair there. Senator Bozeman in Arkansas is the ranking member on the Senate side. So those folks are all really important, really critical in shaping the Farm Bill, and the committees that make them up are important. That's not to say all individual members are not, because they are. Everybody's got to vote on the Farm Bill eventually, and those folks are listening to their colleagues. So we focus on everybody. But we really zero in on those committees when it comes to the Farm Bill. So Representative Thompson dropped his bill, which is a Republican bill. It was shaped by him, and from what we've heard, did not have Democratic input, although it will have some Democratic priorities within it. So we're going to already start hearing he's going to call it a bipartisan bill, and the Democrats are going to come back and say it's not a bipartisan bill. So that, we're going to hear all of that back and forth. Senate side will have similar. Senator Debbie Stabenow dropped her bill today as well, which was sort of out of the blue. We knew G.T. Thompson was planning on pushing his bill this month, and we weren't getting a read from Senator Stabenow on when she was going to do hers. And so she sort of kept it quiet and dropped her bill as well today. So again, once things start happening, they start happening fast. But similar to her, I mean, it was a bill developed on the Democratic side, although from what we've been able to ascertain, we think the Democratic or the Senate process has been a bit more bipartisan in its approach to what they've shaped so far. But the bills still have, as of right now, it's Senator Stabenow's bill and Senator Thompson's bill, and we've now got to do some work to try and make them bipartisan. But before we can do that, Bread for the World, our policy experts, they've just gotten the contents of the bills this evening, and so we're starting to sit down and just analyze what's in them. So we don't have a full read on that just yet, but we have seen the frameworks for them. So it gives us a sense of what's coming. And here's the bottom line is the House bill doesn't look great. The Senate bill looks much stronger. We've seen more of the Senate bill because we've just gotten more. Stabenow has been a little more forthcoming in giving details. We know that they have drawn a hard line on protecting SNAP. You know, if I don't want to get too into the weeds on it, but if you all have been paying attention to the back and forth there, you know, there's been a lot of debate around what's called the Thrifty Food Plan, which is the underlying not system, but the underlying formula that sets what the SNAP benefits are. And there's 3 different formulas in the USDA that could be used. This is the cheapest one. That's the thriftiest one. And a couple years ago, after 40 years of never seeing an increase to SNAP benefits outside of a few inflationary raises, President Biden moved singularly through the USDA to raise SNAP benefits in the Thrifty Food Plan. That angered G.T. Thompson and the Republicans. That's a whole nother webinar in Zoom probably, but politics have been playing out there. But the bottom line is SNAP benefits hadn't increased in 40 years. And it wasn't cheap, but the reality is that increase bumped up SNAP benefits by about $1.19 a day on average per person. So cumulatively, yes, it's real money, but in terms of what an individual person is receiving, not a huge increase. Those of you who are schooled on SNAP know that it's not a big amount to begin with. I think the average SNAP benefit in Arizona is somewhere around $253 or so. And I don't think there's a county in the US, there might be one, where the average SNAP benefit will cover the cost of an average meal. We're not talking about a lot of money when it comes to receiving SNAP, but the politics have been what they are there. But in the Senate bill, they're protecting SNAP. They're not trying to change that change to Thrifty. They're defending what's been there. That's something we obviously support. We also saw that there were there was a fairly significant increase to GusNIP, as well as a lowering of the percentage, not at the matching percentage, not as high as what we've advocated for, but something that's a positive movement. Also saw that the framework to transition Puerto Rico NAP to SNAP is also included in there. And that's very exciting, as well as the Reform Act, which is the marker bill around the SNAP felony ban, which is included. Don't know about food waste yet. Haven't been able to see those details. That's probably the one most likely to not be in there, but we don't know. And on the international side, I think I failed to mention the Farm Bill impacts the international side as well. Our largest international nutrition programs and development programs are authorized through the Farm Bill, programs like Food for Peace and McGovern Dole. The proposal for those programs on the Senate bill are strong in what we've asked for as well. So from what we've seen on the House side, we know that Representative Thompson's proposal around Thrifty would cut about $30 billion from SNAP. Now, there's back and forth. He claims it's not a cut, and so we're probably not going to get into arguing over words, but the bottom line is it undermines the value of SNAP benefits by about $30 billion over the course of 10 years. Something we oppose for sure. We haven't seen any language about GusNIP in his bill. We did see language around the Reform Act. That's a positive. We were told NAFTA SNAP isn't viable on the House side, so we don't expect to see that there as well. And while they have authorized the international programs at the level that we've set, they have incorporated some international pieces of the legislation that decrease the commodity percentage that are required for the international programs that are troubling for us. So matched up based on very limited information. We know the House bill is not going to be nearly as strong as the Senate bill. And so early on, we're going to be pushing hard to really build a bipartisan consensus around the Senate bill, because that'll be the stronger bill to negotiate from. So the message for us coming out of this will continue to be, we need a farm bill that, you know, protects and strengthens SNAP, that is equitable for the most vulnerable, and also is sustainable. So we're going to continue to message on what we've been doing for 2 years right now, as we continue to just figure out the details around both these bills. But we do know the Senate bill looks like it's going to be the much stronger bill, and the one that we're hoping can be negotiated from. So I'll pause there if there's any questions.
Thank you. That's really exciting. Fingers crossed.
It is.
Fingers crossed. Any questions for Matt? Go ahead, Gail. Look, I've been teaching online since 2020. I no longer need in person to catch on to body language.
Yeah, you're right. So here in Arizona, there really is a good organization called Waste Not that does capture usable food and gets it distributed to food banks around.
Sure.
I know that that's true in a couple of other states, but I don't think it's done, you know, across the board. Is there some support that can go into that kind of a program?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, there are different strategies there. I mean, one is a bill we passed. It wasn't too long, a year or two ago. Not, and when I say we, I don't mean just Bread, but we were part of a collective effort. But the Bill Emerson Humanitarian Food Waste Act, which really helped lessen liability for organizations, so they could be more confident in being willing to donate. You know, as I mentioned earlier, restaurants, grocery stores, etc., often had hesitation because they didn't want to donate something that might get somebody sick and then be liable for it. So there's those bills are out there. I think there's a push actually in this farm bill for more education resources around things like that, because it's still fairly unknown. So there's different efforts, but definitely around education, and then of course things like that I've talked about, like the date labeling as well. There's also a push for to create a food waste office in the USDA, and that's something that we've certainly supported, and may actually have a better chance of getting into the farm bill than date labeling. So you know, Congress loves to create new bureaucracies, but no, even we support it. It would be needed and important, but we don't know yet because we haven't seen the bill language. So, and that would be an office that would start to coordinate all those kinds of efforts. And because you're right, there's lots of organizations all over the country that have sprung up very grassroots and that are doing exactly what you're talking about, Gail.
Thank you.
Sarah.
Yeah, Matt, this is more of a historical question, but in the past, because the history of this kind of thing can often give us more information about the way we move forward. In the past, what have been the major areas of contention between, for example, you're talking about the Senate bill and the bill coming from the House of Representatives? Where do you see, where are the typical dissensions between the two?
Yeah, that's a great question, Sarah. Thanks. I think, you know, so historically, and you know, the Farm Bill, I'm blanking on the first year it started, but it was a Depression era effort, and so this is about the 18th Farm Bill we've had. And traditionally, the Farm Bill has been a very bipartisan effort. It's always been something that has, garnered Republican and Democratic support together. That's not to say there aren't always issues and whatnot. And this has been, the last couple of Farm Bill cycles have started to show cracks in that, as won't be surprised, as we've just seen everything become more polarized in Congress. But part of the reason why it's always been such a bipartisan endeavor is because of those commodities, is because of those titles that I've talked about. It's sort of been an agreement that, hey, the Republicans want the farm commodities, and I'm talking very broad strokes here, but the Republicans want the farm commodities and some of the trade components, and the Democrats want the nutrition components, and they sort of agreed to support one another and to get it done. And so there's often been some thoughts in the past about decoupling pieces of the Farm Bill, like just putting the nutrition programs in their own title, but it's something that's always been opposed by anti-hunger advocates and big business and big commodity folks, because getting those things done, they've always been able to get them done, tying them together, sort of hitching their horse to each other's wagon, if you will. So we've just started to see some of those same cracks and polarization, through the broader politics that we've been experiencing in our country. But I think it's also tied to increasing cost. This is going to be estimated to be the first Farm Bill that's going to top out over $1 trillion. So there's scapegoating about where that's going and who that's going to. And I think you can see that in some ways with this, with the argument over the Thrifty Food Plan and the argument over SNAP. And, trying to undercut SNAP that's often, at least this will be my third Farm Bill, and that's always been the biggest battleground piece too, is really trying to, when there's money that they're trying to save, usually trying to cut into SNAP. SNAP is by far the biggest piece of the pie in the Farm Bill. But, as I talked about earlier, it's money well spent, and it's money, when you look at it in terms of the benefits, we're not talking about extravagant benefits going to anybody, but the overall piece of the pie is big. So, and there's always been fights over SNAP and whatnot, but we've just seen some of that polarization breaking through as well. So.
Y'all are asking good questions tonight. Any other questions for Matt?
Yeah, I do.
Hey.
Does the Farm Bill have anything to do with subsidies for certain crops or certain farming practices?
Yep, definitely does. It does. And that's the commodity title of supporting farms. Yep. And that's been, well, yeah, I mean, when the Farm Bill was started, and Reverend Ellie put it in there during the Depression, right, that was being used to support generally what was mainly family farms at the time. Our farm, we have a different system these days. So most of that commodity is going to not small family farms, it's going to big corporate farms. And so that sort of sets up the political dynamics and the political fight. It's not the way the anti-hunger Bread for the World we'd love to see a different system. But the reality is too, we don't have the power to change that. And so we're trying to, how do we both protect SNAP and start to again think of the Farm Bill as a systems bill that we can start to advocate for more change and not just be dug in on protecting SNAP. But that often seems to be where we're at every Farm Bill, because that is the the program that's come after the most. I will say the other component of how we support farmers in this, and similar to like, so Amber's a good example. I don't know I don't know Amber directly, so I'm not suggesting she participates in it, but Amber represents the type of farmer who participates in the GusNIP program. The GusNIP program is not so much in terms of receiving the benefits necessarily, but in terms of it benefits them, because Amber would be the type of farmer who, she's not selling huge volumes. She's going to farmers markets and selling her products there. And GusNIP is really mainly lifting up small shareholder farmers who are selling in small settings, just getting started. And most of those folks are Black and brown farmers. So GusNIP is a program that we've seen has really sort of in a backdoor way been able to really support and subsidize, if you will, smaller farmers, and particularly farmers of color.
That's awesome. Yeah, we're one of the things I'm looking at doing, part of the ways that I'm building relationships here in Tucson, is meeting with a lot of the food banks and who they have relationships with in the local farming area. So in Tucson, I've met with a number of the local farmers to see how they're collaborating, and hopefully a little bit more about, and Matt, there's a question for you into chat while I talk. And building the connection, how do we get more engaged in not only just food bank work, but in the food growing network as well? And so, Matt, you see that question?
Yeah, I got it. I think I spelled it right in my, but if you click on our Farm Bill platform, you can see it in there as well. It's listed out, yep. But it's named, Gus Schumacher is the person who sort of pioneered the program. So it's the GusNIP Nutrition Incentive Program.
I love that.
Love the-
That they use yeah. Gary, go ahead.
Are you acquainted enough with our Arizona delegation to tell us whether there's any that we ought to be focused on in Arizona? It's delegation.
Yeah,
yeah, whether
I'm
there
sorry,
are
go ahead.
whether there are any people who are going to be problems.
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say, I mean, in general, in general, I think on the House side, the Democrats are the folks who probably need to be focused on the most, particularly if you have any vulnerable Democrats. I don't think you do. Do you? Do you have any vulnerable Democrats in the House?
I don't-
More or less.
I think it's in the
Yeah.
Senate, the House.
Maybe Siscomani.
Siscomani would be the one. So in theory, the vulnerable Democrats, although none of them are on the Ag Committee. So what we're trying to do right now is really trying to educate Democrats on the Ag Committee, especially those who may feel like they need to take a vote to vote positively on this bill that isn't going to be a good bill, because they're afraid if they don't, it might impact their election. So we're trying to really just buttress them around, hey, this, we want to support them on supporting SNAP, and also point them to make sure that they're aware that the Senate bill can provide them some cover. I think on the Senate side, I mean, every senator is important because we need we need that bill to be bipartisan. If we don't get a bipartisan bill, if we get a Democratic bill on the Senate side and Republican on the House side, they're not going anywhere. So we really want to build a Democratic consensus on the Republican side. So you've got a retiring senator, who knows where she's going to come down. But we need all the votes we can get on the Senate side. So I think both your senators are important. And I would never want to be a person who says it's not going to make an impact, especially not on Republican side, because we we've spent, just to be frank, we spent most of the last 2 years really working with Republicans to try and get them. And we've made a ton of all of the marker bills we have on these issues are bipartisan. So personally, I'll say I'm not taking it personally, but personally, I'm a little disappointed in Thompson's bill. Not surprised, but we had hoped we'd see a little bit more of bipartisan progress than we are. But we think he's got all the Republicans lined up on the House side. Still, I'd say we want to make the Farm Bill an issue, and so continuing to educate your member and letting them know that they've got that folks in their district who care about this issue is important. But the senators are going to be probably the bigger play for us, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you. Great questions. Anyone else? Gail says, does the Facebook have watchdogs on ag chemicals that have a negative residual health implications, including not Facebook. Wow, y'all, food bill. Have watchdogs on ag chemicals that have, I don't even use Facebook, that have negative residual health implications, including passing through breast milk.
I couldn't answer that question, Gail. I'm sorry. We can try and find, I wouldn't want to try and give you an answer. I haven't heard anything like that. So, and I know we do a very poor job in general regulating chemicals in this country. So, but I'd have to look into it.
It would be more with the like EPA, but would be my guess there, but Sarah might know as our cherishing creation person too, but I think it would come more along the climate lens.
Definitely. Great.
I think that's true, Katie. I think it's typically FDA that measures those kinds of things. Yeah.
Cool. Reverend Ellie, are we ready to move on to maybe sort of steps we can take?
Yes, please. That would be lovely. Thank you.
Okay, great. So I want to just put, I'll just throw 3 things out there to consider, and then I'll hand it back to you, Reverend Ellie, and you can take it where you want or direct me what you'd like to offer. So one is, you've heard, communicating with our members right now is really important. Now is a great time. We, in Bread for the World, our sort of signature advocacy action is what we call the offering of letters. So I would invite each of you to participate in that and to organize one if you're inclined. I think timing is always the challenge now, and so you might be saying, well, an offering of letters is, I'm going to write letters and send them off. Could be a month or so before they get anywhere, right? So I would really encourage. I would think about it in a couple ways. One, to do it digitally, which is obviously you can have an impact right away. Or if you do old-fashioned way, that you make sure you deliver those. You personally deliver those to an office. And frankly, I'd offer a couple of best practices no matter how you do it. And it would all have an impact right now. One is that you personalize your letters. So if you're writing digitally or personally, that you personalize it. So if you go online to bread.org/OL, you can be taken to a digital letter where you could send tonight, but you can go into that letter and you can personalize it. It's a template letter, and you can add a little bit about what you think. And that's important because when you do that, it literally changes the trajectory of where that email gets sent. In an office, instead of getting sort of routed into a form letter setting, that gets looked at in a different place. So when you personalize emails, it makes a different impact. It gets seen more often than just getting counted. So personalizing emails is really important. And certainly personalizing a handwritten letter is really important. And being able to just share why you care, why this is important to you. You know, the number one hurdle we always have to get over with folks, you don't need to be a policy expert at all. You just need to be you and say why you care about this. That's what members of Congress mostly want to know. They've got access to all sorts of policy experts. They need to hear from their constituents and know that their constituents care about these issues. So personalization is key. Second is that you would hand deliver those letters. So if you're writing from a church or a school or a nonprofit, that you would either collect those letters or you would collect a tally of them, and you'd either call the office to set up a meeting or show up at the office and ask to talk to an aide, and you'd use those letters as a way to just make a connection, make a personal connection, and initiate a relationship or build a relationship. And then finally, that you would send an email to the legislative director in DC. And we encourage you do that perhaps before you go do a in-personal meeting or immediately after. So if I'm taking my church to go meet with the local office, I would send an email to the legislative director in DC and let them know, hey, I'm bringing a group of 5 people to meet with Joe in representative's office, and we're going to talk Farm Bill. And here's a copy of the letter that we're going to be delivering, kind of thing. So just so that they know and start making that connection. So those are sort of the 3. And then of course you can promote and advertise on social media if you do that stuff. But those are really important steps that really make sure your letters are being felt on multiple levels, as opposed to just dropping them in the mail and letting them go, which there's nothing wrong with that either. But that's a more strategic way of using your letters, using your emails. So I'd encourage you to think about doing an OL. The website that Reverend Ellie put on there gives you all the information that you need to do that. The second big thing is I'd point to is we have our advocacy summit coming up in June, on June 10th and 11th in Washington, DC. If you have the means and the time, I'd invite you to attend that and to come. And I'll share links to some of these things with Reverend Ellie that she can send out to you. But you know, obviously, that takes resources, but we'd love to have you in DC, love to help host you in DC and be able to be part of meetings on the Hill. I know Reverend Katie's going to be there, Reverend Ellie's going to be there. We're excited about that, but there's room for more. If anyone else would like to attend, that's June 10th and June 11th. And then the third step I would suggest to think about, and this starts getting us thinking about the future, is to be part of or to commit to host a listening session for our Nourish Our Future campaign. And that's something I can talk to you more about, but I'll also share a link for that that has some information there and where you can make a commitment to host a listening session, and we can support you on that. So those three steps.
Yeah, those seem completely and totally doable. And Reverend Katie is a lot of fun to get to know outside of the office. You get to learn about dogs. You get to learn about her doctorate of ministry project. You get to learn about all of her, just dopeness, just for the lack of better term, just dopeness. And she's going to be there. So if you go to this advocacy thing, yes, you're going to be doing good work, but then you can gossip about all of the things that Congress does. And it'll be this little thing that you get to do with Reverend Katie. And me, of course, I'll be there too, but I'm not as fun as Katie. Sarah.
Yeah, I got another question for Matt. When is this coming up for a vote? What is the time that we're looking toward?
Good question. So I didn't share that. The house markup, which means it'll be marked up on the bill, amendments will be received and then voted on, is going to be May 23rd. At least that's what we heard today.
Oh, okay.
And then the vote, still has to go to the floor for a vote. And we don't know yet when the Senate markup will be. We just don't know, but it could be, in theory, it could be a week from now. In theory, it could be a month from now. Time is important, but I also say you can't, you work with what you got there, right? I mean, it's not, if you can't do an OL next week, you do it the week, it'll be relevant one way or the other, because we've got to go through the committee, we've got to go to the House, the floor votes, and then we've got to go back for a conferencing and then another vote. So there's still a good amount of process going, and none of you are relating to Ag Committee members. So you've got some time as well to impact their vote. Although the sooner you can talk to them, the better, because you can tell them, we need you to go talk to, if they're Republican, you can tell them, we need you to go talk to Representative Thompson and tell them this is a priority. And if they're on the Senate side, you can ask them to go talk to Stabenow or Bozeman. So it's urgency, but we've also got some time.
And this will all be coming via a follow-up email as well. So if you can't save these links, please know that there are ways. Was somebody going to ask a question? No more questions? All right. Well, before everybody else goes, we'll let Matt go because it is late there. Like we said, we'd much rather have, I'd much rather, be drinking wine and getting a bath and reading a book and brushing my teeth about this time at night. So if we can all just put a wish or a comment or anything into chat for Matt to see on his way out. And I invite the rest of you all to stay with us just for a moment. If you remember at the beginning of this session, I hopefully planted some seeds that I wanted to cultivate the ideas that were percolating in your head as Matt was presenting about the ways that you can become engaged, and share that with us. Maybe if they're similar, we can take field trips to Flagstaff, not to put Sarah on the spot or anything, whatever it is. Let's stay around and let's share some ideas. And Matt, just thank you. I know that I can only imagine how difficult this work is. From the listening sessions and being present in those stories, to the hosting and finding people to share their stories and to host these listening sessions, to then turning around on the other end of the spectrum and talking to political officials. I just have so much just awe for you and the work that you do. So thank you. And thank you for you said this is your third farm bill. So that means you've been doing this work for close to 20 years.
That's right.
God bless all special. If there were just, God bless you. God bless you. Thank you for that.
God bless all you. Thank you. And on my way out, just thanks again. And the last thing I forgot too is tomorrow I'm hosting a regional meeting for the Southwest. So if you're, I put the link there if you want to sign up, and actually, even if you can't attend, sign up, and then you'll get the video from it. And we're actually doing a listening session in the meeting. So yeah, welcome to have you there, but really appreciate the time, appreciate all you all are doing through your congregations, your organizations, and through the Arizona Faith Network, and look forward to more partnerships. So thanks, Reverend Ellie.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll see you in DC in close to a month.
Yeah, look forward to it. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, for the rest of you all, what are we thinking? What do we have planned? What are your questions? Whatever.
You know, I normally, sorry to jump in real quick, Sarah. I normally would be like an advocate of hard paper, handwritten notes and stuff, but I feel like it's gonna be moving pretty quick right now. And so while we could do both, I definitely think one thing to have everybody do is definitely do the electronic version. And then if they want to supplement with the handwritten stuff, we can always take it to the Hill with us too. So if you do write something and you want to hand it to Elliot or me, or physically mail it to us, you could do that too. But I do think pushing our congregations and whoever we can to get those e-blasts in sooner rather than later is important. I'm excited it moved. I didn't know that till we logged on tonight. I was like, wait, what? We've been sitting here, we've been pushing for this for over a year and it's just been stalled. So exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. And the work that folks like Melanie are doing, you know, y'all are doing good work in your communities, but like just thinking about the intersectionality, right? So when he was talking, and I'm sorry, Sarah, I know I jumped
That's
in.
okay. No problem.
I was looking at our calendar because I was like, oh, what am I going to put into chat to get people, you know, who zone out and zoom to chat every once in a while, like, oh, think about AFN. And what spurred in my mind when I was doing that, Matt was talking about, well, when we host these listening sessions, it's not like we thought about the food labels, right? It was having the listening conversations and hearing that the environment was something that kept coming up over and over again. And I thought about the work that AFN does. And so much of the work that we engage in here in 2024 is so tied together. It is so woven together. And if you think about the CCC, I was like, oh, we've got the CCC meeting coming up here. I think it's next week. And then we have the Voting Rights Commission coming up tomorrow. And we have the Social Justice Commission coming. There are so many ways in which you can get engaged in the work and know that what you do with the hunger and housing impacts what you do with voting, impacts what you do with the environment, impacts whatever, right? And so, and how we relate to one another. How do we build community in our houses of worship and beyond, right? And so know that the work that each of you do is really important. And I want to recognize that because these sessions are a lot of asking you to do something for us, not AFN specifically, but for us, right? To eres mi otro yo, not toro yo, as my autocorrect put into chat earlier. Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah, just to build on what you said, Reverend Ellie, and then a suggestion. But we have a Triple H thing going on here at Arizona Faith Network: hunger, housing, and heat relief. People who are impacted by one are impacted by both of them. And I'm not sure how difficult it would be to get an op-ed or a letter to the editor into some of our newspapers, but that might be a way to bring it, you know, to wider attention. And I know Katie is a pretty influential person in the within the state, but we have some other powerful leaders on our board as well who might be able to wangle something like that, utilizing, you know, our good public relations. But also there are the neighborhood newspapers and the community pages that oftentimes devote articles reporting on this kind of thing. I know I'm going to go ahead and approach our newspaper and Flagstaff and maybe just contribute a letter to the editor and see if it can bring some interest, but that's another way of going about lifting this up. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and we, along with that, if we have an op-ed, you know, we work with a lot of media strategists folks. And so if anyone's interested in penning an op-ed and or even ghostwriting one, if you think like this person's name on here would be maybe more likely to get published, you know, that's helpful too. I think it's a great idea. And especially here in Arizona, you know, we didn't have a whole lot of hunger legislation going on at the state level, but when the Farm Bill gets passed, then it's the state that is doing the administration of SNAP and or not. in a lot of ways. And so there's been long efforts around that. But this year, as we've seen, our state has been very distracted by fighting over other things. But the heat's definitely going to be in the news, and we have a press conference on Friday with the state and county on it that Irene is speaking at. I'm 5 years in, going on my 6th year at AFN, so I said this year I don't have to be the one that does all the press conferences. The rest of the staff and board get to do them because I got pressed out last year. So y'all get to come up to the batting plate and go. But I think that's a great way to go about it, Sarah, is coming at it from the heat angle. And gosh, we are in a crisis of a lot of things right now in Arizona, and hunger comes with it. So yeah, and we're seeing ARPA is going to go away, the American Rescue Plan dollars in the next year, and a lot of those dollars are supplementing things like food banks and shelters right now. Yeah, it's a little scary.
Ellie,
Garrett?
and Katie and others, do we have any partners that we could get to speak to this if we were to do an op-ed? Is this an issue that is of particular importance, for example, to any of our communities like Mesa or Tempe or Phoenix? Could we get any government leaders to join in some kind of an effort like that? So it's not just an op-ed from us, but maybe think about 2 or 3 partners who might join in an op-ed piece in support of this.
Yeah, it's depending on the angle we come at it as. If it's heat relief, well, we're cross denominations right now with that, but definitely could get anyone from. We're at Disciples, we're at UCC, we're at Methodist, we're at Lutherans this year. We're running Grace Lutherans heat relief this year. Gosh, where else are we? I'm forgetting. Dr. Stewart. So we're at FIBCO. That would be one way to go about it too. So American Baptists there. And then the lawmakers coming at it from the heat climate angle. We have Representative Contreras has been lockstep with us on everything there. She's the one that kind of pushed her and Representative Schwiebert, whose daughter-in-law is on the bread board as well. Her son is a United Church of Christ pastor. Her daughter-in-law is a United Methodist pastor in LA, and her daughter-in-law serves on the board of directors for Bread with Me. So she might be the right voice for this, actually, as I'm saying that out loud. That makes a lot of sense because she's so tied to that. Also, as I put in the chat, Garrett, for Disciples of Christ, our denominational structure is really weird compared to everyone else's. We have a general church, and then we have National Convocation, which is our Black church. We have National Obra Hispania, which is our Hispanic church, and we have NAPAD, which is our National Asian Pacific Islanders church. And we're all one church, but we have kind of like a general minister and president and like 3 specific general ministers and presidents to that. So our Lori Tapia, who lives in Mesa, is the first woman ever and Mexican American to serve as our general minister for our Hispanic branch of the church. And she's here, and she's new on the bread board too. So she would be a really strong voice as well. And she's a killer preacher, y'all. If you ever need a guest preacher, woof.
Well, I'm just thinking that if we could perhaps take a firsthand drafting some sort of a letter with respect to either the agricultural bill or heat relief or something else, and then circulate it to some of these partners and end up with signatures from some of those important names, it would certainly give it a lot better chance of number one and getting a lot more attention.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they're one of our partners, Garrett. So with the Easy AHA group, the Arizona Anti-Hunger Alliance, like, I feel like we would be a good group to continued outreach to them to pull in folks. And the Food Bank Network has a meeting tomorrow or Friday, and I can't make it on Friday. But it would be nice if one of our members here can make that meeting. If you want to email me, I'll get you the link and the time and stuff. And then be able to propose something, because they open it up to, hey, what is happening in the community? And the meeting on Friday in particular is about schools and EBT and that kind of stuff. So I just need to.
Think any of our more rural lawmakers at the state or at the federal level representing Arizona are going to be really key to this too, because we always forget the rural areas a lot, living in the middle of Phoenix, but the farms across Arizona, they're going to be really, this farm bill is going to be key to folks' campaigns in the fall. So we might want to do some research saying that, Garrett, and who's up for re-election in rural areas with a lot of farmers.
And you know, whether we get it in on time now, collecting this information, doing this advocacy work is a good way to start planting the seeds for the next bill, right? Because then we're going to have a consistent message. We're going to be on the front lines, so to speak, for repeated history, right? Showing and demonstrating how important this work is to our community. So absolutely. Anybody else want to share any ideas? Well, beloveds, I want to offer you a message here that I thought about a little bit earlier. Sometimes, especially when listening to Matt share his story about, you know, coming into the work and the work that he does, with all that we have going on in the world right now, with what 2024 is, or what we imagine it to be, one word keeps coming up to me or for me, and that's the word courage. And so I want to continue to remind yourself that courage can come in many shapes. Sometimes courage is a light and as gentle as the soft wind that reminds you that you are still alive as you feel the air on your skin. And there is room for you to move slowly forward towards the mountains you are moving toward in a mindful way, no matter how much that shape of your courage takes. Know that all of the ways that courage the shape that courage takes is welcome. We need it. However you live into courage, beloveds, we get to do it together. So thank you for joining us for our second Hunger and Housing 101 session. We learned about heat. Now we learned about the Farm Bill. The next session is going to be talking about and exploring the myths behind addiction and homelessness. And we're going to be learning practical tools on how to learn what is heat related, what is not, and how do we build communities of care and continuing to build off of that model of resiliency that Reverend Katie and others presented last week. And then we have some exciting things coming up after that. But tune into our Social Justice Commission meeting tomorrow at 8:30. We get to hear from another AFN staff member to talk about the murdered and Indigenous women work that is being done. We have our Voting Rights Committee is also meeting tomorrow. We have lots of things online. When we talk about the Farm Bill, we cannot think and not think about Oak Flat. And so we have these wonderful trainings that are happening on Mondays at 6 o'clock through May 20th in order to what it looks like to build resiliency with our Indigenous brothers and sisters. And so lots going on. Just because it's getting hot does not mean that the folks at AFN stop. We just go up to Flagstaff to visit Sarah. Beloveds, Sarah, Gail, Deborah, Barbara, Garrett, Katie, Marilyn, and Vasu, and all of those who joined previously but got off. I just want to extend my gratitude to you. Thank you for being in community with us and for building bridges and breaking barriers and all of that good stuff. Be well, and I look forward to seeing y'all soon. Bye.